Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Emily.
And today I am going to tell you a story about a dentist, a lawyer, a teacher, and a gang member. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the episode. This is Editing Kelsey. If you're new to the pod, that is future Kelsey after the recording when I realized I needed to add something to the episode. So I am just here to clarify because we originally thought this was going to be a 2-part episode. Then we thought 3, and it ended up being 4 episodes. You probably saw that in the title. I'm sure it says part 1 of 4. So just wanted to let you know how we're going to release everything. So we're doing part 1 today. Part 2, you're going to get this Thursday. Bonus episode, okay? 2 episodes this week. Part 3 is going to be next Tuesday, normal Tuesday episode. And then part 4 is going to be the following Tuesday, again, just per usual. So just so you know what's going on, you're getting a little bonus episode because me and Emily don't know how to shut the hell up, and it turned into 4 parts. So we'll go back to the recording, and I hope you guys enjoy the episode. That's it.
I think I've heard of it.
Huh?
I think I've heard of this before.
Okay. I am so excited about today's episode. This case has reinvigorated me. I think for a while I was like, I don't know. This case it's doing it for me. I had so much fun doing all of this research. So, by the way, sorry, that sounds horrible. Like, this is a fucking horrific story. Of course, someone dies. It is a murder. We are going to talk about the murder of Dan Markel. It is very sad, but it is one of the fucking craziest, wildest cases I've ever heard. One thing I also wanted to know about this case is, of course, like we've already said, this is about the murder of Dan Markel. And what happened to Dan Markel is absolutely horrific. And what these people did to him is just beyond words. But I think our tone for this episode is going to be, or for these episodes, is going to be a little bit different than normal. Because while the case is Dan's murder, the majority of this story is about what the police did to catch the people who did this to him. And I think there's a little bit of excitement behind it because, spoiler alert, the police did a fantastic job in this case. And so there's going to be a lot of like, you're like, oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah, they got him. And I think the vibe's going to be a little bit different than normal. But I want to make it clear that what happened to Dan is absolutely horrific, and any cheery tones you hear from us is because we are like excited and happy to see the police doing such a fantastic job on this case and one by one taking down the killers of Dan Markel.
I think you told me about this a couple years ago, and did Mr. Ballin cover this, or
no? Was it
like a whole podcast about it?
Yes,
you were telling
Over
me about
My
this.
Dead Body.
Yeah,
okay.
You told me about this.
Okay, there is an incredible podcast about this case. It is called Over My Dead Body, and they have multiple seasons. It's season 1. It's called Tally, short for Tallahassee, and there's a bunch of different producers on it, but like the guy who is narrating it is Matt Scher, and he is absolutely fantastic. And obviously, you know, he's interviewing these people for the podcast. So it's so interesting. I want everyone to go listen to it. It is amazing, but I want you to listen to it after part 2 because I just feel like come along for the ride with me. Okay. Now, what I will say is Over My Dead Body came out a few years ago. I didn't write down what year, but a lot has happened since then.
Oh.
So where they leave off is much earlier than where we're going to leave off. I've got some updates on the case for you. I don't know if you dropped any update episodes or anything about that, but a lot of shit has gone down since. So
I'm excited to bring this a full circle because I remember you so excited telling me about this. Like, dude, you got to listen to this crazy fucking case.
it is okay. So I heard another podcast cover it. Like, I listened to something about it, I don't know, a few months ago, and I like jotted it down on my list, but it was just like a one episode thing. So they didn't go into all the details. And then when I was researching, that's when I realized, I was like, wait, I saw it Over My Dead Body. I was like, wait, I remember listening to this. Like, oh my God, it is so crazy. So that's why normally I try and give you like a good summary of the case before we get started. But I was like, this one, I kind of want you guys, just trust me.
It's a surprise.
Trust me, it is wild, twisty, turny, intriguing. It is obviously horrific too. It's very sad. But that doesn't make it untrue that it is a wild case. In addition to the Over My Dead Body podcast, I also found there's this YouTube page called Madness and Motive, and I'll link it in the show notes. I found this guy because he made a website that has an interactive timeline of everything that happened in this case. This happens in 2014, okay? It's now 2025. And it goes back further. It goes to before the murder. So we're talking almost 2 decades of a timeline that this guy put together. And I fact checked so much of this shit on this timeline because, it's not put out by a news source.
Yeah.
This shit is legit. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, if I had the time, I would be doing this stuff. If I had the time, guys, this is why you have to send the podcast to all your friends and family and like help share and get people to listen, because
Trying to find the time.
the moment I'm doing this full time, y'all are going to get some crazy fucking content output because I got so invested into this case. I'm like, I could literally write 10 episodes on this. 10 episodes. Easily. We could do a whole season on this.
Yeah.
But right now we don't have the time yet. But anyway, check out that guy's YouTube page. I just was like, he rocks. He also made this whole actually, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to. He makes a lot of stuff, okay? Very interesting.
He's put in work.
So, what other, do we have anything else? Oh, merch. Merch is here.
Woo!
All right. So, if you guys are ready to go for a ride, let's do it.
I'm ready.
On July 18th, 2014, a 911 call was made by a resident of Benton Hills in Tallahassee, Florida.
911, what's the address of your emergency case then? Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
We heard it looked in, the garage door was up, and I thought the gentleman was backing out, and I went back to my house, but he never backed out, and I came back over, and his driver's side window is shattered, and he's battered and can't answer. He's inside. I don't know if somebody tried to shoot him or if he shot himself or what. I don't know. He didn't send an ambulance in a hurry. An EMT. He's still alive. He's moving.
Okay, what's going on with him?
I don't know. The driver's side window is all bashed in, and he's got blood all over his head. He's not responding to me. I think you need to hurry.
Yeah, I'm going to get him on the way to you. I just want to ask you a few questions, okay?
Go ahead, but send them as you're asking.
Yes, sir, they're already on the way, okay? Are you with him now?
I'm standing right outside the garage door.
Can you tell me how old he is?
I don't know. He looks like maybe 35 or 40.
Hang on 1 second for me, okay?
Okay.
So that is not the full 911 call. There is a few more minutes, but you get the gist. Basically, what happened was the caller had discovered his neighbor, who was 41-year-old Dan Markel, in the driver's side of his car with gunshot wounds to the head around 11 a.m. that morning. Now, the car was still parked in Dan's garage, which was what had prompted the neighbor to go check in on Dan, as there had recently been break-ins in the neighborhood. So he sees that the car's in the garage, it's running, and there had been all these robberies in the neighborhood. He's like, this is weird. I need to go check it out. So when Dan was found, he was still alive. Unfortunately, this dispatcher mistakenly categorized the priority level of the call, which resulted in a delayed police response. So
The guy said, make sure you have him on the way when you're asking me questions.
yes, yeah, and he did, but because of the way he categorized the call, it took 7 minutes for the dispatcher to correct this error. But once the call was updated to a higher priority, it triggered a protocol that labeled the situation as a, quote, possible security risk for paramedics, end quote. This is all according to CNN. As a result, because they're saying there might be a risk for paramedics, the ambulance had to wait for the police to arrive before they could arrive. Because I think when there's a gunshot wound like that and someone's still alive,
They're like an active shooter.
right. CNN didn't say it that way, but that's the impression I get, is that they thought maybe the shooter's still there. They don't want EMTs, who are 20 years
Putting them
old.
in danger, yeah.
Yeah, they don't want to put people in danger.
The front lines.
So once this call was reprioritized, it took an additional 5 minutes for the police to arrive. So 7 minutes till he changes the priority, then 5 more minutes until the police arrive, meaning the police didn't get there until 12 minutes after that 911 call. Now, once the police arrived and gave paramedics the green light to come, it took them another 7 minutes to begin treatment. So we're at like 19 minutes since this 911 call, about 19 minutes since he was found, that paramedics even get to the scene. Now, Dan was later pronounced dead at the hospital. It wasn't until the next day, however. So he was kept alive at the hospital for a while. I believe they were kind of waiting for his family to arrive, and they had questions about organ donation and things like that. But really, they knew pretty soon after he got there that he was not going to make it.
That is horrifying. First of all, technically he did kind of survive those gunshot wounds to the face for however long he did. But like, man, that's rough.
And for the family, you're now forced to just kind of be left wondering forever if a quicker response might have saved his life.
Yeah.
Now, because of these mistakes, Dan's family was later rewarded $40,000 for this mistake. So I don't know if it was the police or the ambulance company or what. Someone paid them $40,000. I think this was ordered by a court. But that just goes to show you this was a large mistake.
Yeah.
If they're paying out, this was bad. Now, even though the neighbor had assumed that the incident was either tied to break-ins in the area or was a suicide, because that's what he says in the 911 call. I don't know if he shot himself or someone shot him. He originally went over because he thought it was a break-in. There was no gun found in the car with Dan, so he didn't shoot himself.
Yeah.
And it was also evident that he was shot through the window. And no evidence of a robbery. Nothing was missing in the home. Nothing was missing in the car. They didn't take anything. So it was very quickly evident to police that whoever did this had one goal in mind, which was to kill Dan Markel. But the big question with that was, who would want someone like Dan dead? Because Dan was a beloved law professor at Florida State University. He lived in an upscale neighborhood. He was from a good family, and he was a loving and devoted father. He didn't seem like the type of person to have enemies. He seemed like a wealthy, successful, normal guy who was living a life that was very much by the books, by the law, doing what you're supposed to be doing. Now, Dan's mother was actually a savvy businesswoman, and she owned a company called R&M Enterprises, which was like a business consultancy company. And she even authored a book that was titled Room at the Top, A Woman's Guide to Moving Up in Business. His father was the president of an apparel warehousing and distribution business. So he's from a good family, too. It's not like, oh, he's the one that, made it up the ranks in life and became a lawyer. This family's very wealthy. The roots were good. The roots were good. And the roots actually stemmed from Montreal, Canada. So Dan grew up in Montreal, and he only moved to the U.S. when he decided to go to college to study politics and philosophy at a little college called Harvard University.
Ooh, baby. That's a good one.
That's a good one. It's a good one. And actually from Harvard, he graduated magna cum laude.
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit.
That's hard at Harvard.
Yeah, I hate that you said that because I was just going to say, by the way, I also graduated magna cum laude, but
I didn't.
not from Harvard, so definitely not the same.
Still hard. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, coming from a very devout Jewish family, Dan chose to pursue a master's degree in political theory at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and Cambridge before returning to Harvard for his law degree. So he's like, I'm going to the motherland. Big tings, dude. Big tings. Now, he went on to, after he was done with all of his schooling, he went on to publish tons of academic articles and essays, some of which were published in very well-known publications such as The Atlantic and The New York Times, which you may have heard of.
May have.
I pay to hear about it.
I am subscribed.
That's the one thing that you learn about when you start a podcast that you have to do a ton of research for. You have to buy all these articles.
Those journal subscriptions.
Dude, I'm subscribed to so many. I've got some South African newspaper. I've got New Zealand now because of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope. I'm worldly with my reading, okay? Which, by the way, I signed up for the New Zealand Herald, and they literally, I didn't realize this, but I got international charges on my credit card. I was like, you're kidding me.
Oh, no.
I'm like, I'm in the U.S. still.
That sucks.
But in addition to all of his articles and essays, Dan also co-authored a book in 2009, which was titled Privilege or Punish: Criminal Justice and the Challenge of Family Ties.
And he's got a book? Wow.
Yes.
Dude.
And this book is a piece of work that provides an almost poetic sense of irony to Dan's tragic murder. Foreshadowing.
Oh, we love a foreshadow.
Now, after Dan graduated law school, he took a job at a law firm in Washington, D.C. And while he was working there, it seems that he decided it was time to look for a partner to share his life with. He seemed like one of those guys where he's doing the steps in order the way you're supposed to do them. And now it's like, okay, he's finished with his education. What's next in life?
Yeah, he's ticking all his boxes.
Which, nothing wrong with that, you know? Some people like to do that kind of stuff. You can tell by the fact that me and Emily are almost 30 and unmarried. We don't do it that way, but
I'm on my own timeline. My mom's not happy about it, but hey.
Hey. So he decides he wants to look for a partner. It's time. And because his religion was such an important part of his life, he decided that he was going to look for a partner using the Jewish dating site JDate.
I thought you were about to say Plenty of Fish, and I said, wow.
No, that's
where
Christian.
my aunt met.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, fun. So, yeah, he decides to use JDate, and he's just kind of trying to look for someone that has similar values, similar priorities, and he definitely wants someone who's also Jewish.
Hey, you want to go on a JDate?
You want to go on a JDate?
What an interesting name for a dating app.
It's better than Plenty of Fish.
That is true, but like...
Plenty of Fish, weird name.
There's plenty of fish in the sea.
I like Farmers Only.
Same. That is the most creative name I think I've heard of.
I love it. Now, it is on JDate that Dan met a woman by the name of Wendy, with an I, Adelson.
Oh, I love that.
Wendy with an I.
This episode is brought to you by Companion. Iris and Josh seem like the perfect match, but when a weekend getaway turns into a nightmare, Iris realizes that things aren't as perfect as they appear. From the creators of Barbarian and the studio that brought you The Notebook comes a twisted tale of modern romance and the sweet satisfaction of revenge. Companion, only in theaters January 31st. Rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
This episode is brought to you by Hill's Pet Nutrition. Every shelter pet deserves a second chance. And you're making it possible for thousands of them every day. Because when you feed your pet Hills, you help feed a shelter pet, which helps make them healthy, happy, and more adoptable, changing their life forever. So they can change yours. Over 15 million shelter pets fed and adopted. Science did that. Visit hillspet.com/podcast to learn more.
Now, Wendy's childhood was a little different from Dan's. While Dan grew up in snowy Toronto, Wendy was raised on the beaches of Miami, Florida.
Ooh.
Party. However, like Dan, Wendy came from what seemed to be a good and well-off family. Her father, Harvey, was a dentist, which, if you don't know, there are very big bucks in dentistry here in the United States. And Wendy's mother, Donna, was actually a teacher for years, but she did eventually leave her job to start helping Harvey run the family business because as he got older in his career, he took on more clients and they started opening multiple locations. And they opened this, they call it the Adelson Institute. So there's multiple different offices. They have like a ton of dentists that travel around. And so it's not just, your dentist who's like a family practice and there's just one dentist there, whatever. Like this is a business, okay? They're the type of dentist like
they got a dentist chain.
They've got a chain.
A chain of dentistries.
And something about the word, the Adelson Institute, I'm like, something about institute. I don't know if maybe they trained younger dentists or something because I'm like, that makes it sound like it's some sort of training or school or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, Wendy also had 2 older brothers. The oldest of the 3 was Rob, who grew up to be a doctor. The middle child was her brother Charlie, who, like his father, became a dentist, or they call him a periodontist. I don't know if that's, I should have Googled. Let me Google it.
I wonder if that's similar to like an orthodontist,
I don't know. I've heard it like used interchangeably with dentists, but I should have asked Katie. Okay, so a periodontist is a dentist who specializes in the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of periodontal disease.
Is that like gum disease?
A chronic inflammatory disease that affects the gums and bone supporting the teeth, also known as, gum disease.
Oh, okay.
And they also do the placement of dental implants. Okay. And that,
the more you know.
The source for that is the American Academy of Periodontology.
Wow.
Whew, that's a word.
Jinx.
So you've got the oldest brother, Rob. He's a doctor. You've got Charlie, who also becomes a very successful dentist. And then you've got the youngest child, who is Wendy, who decided to pursue a career as an attorney. So you can see Wendy and Dan, they had a lot in common. They were both lawyers, they were both Jewish, and they both seemed to want the good old American dream of having a family and a career. And they just wanted it all. On top of this, they both had blue eyes, which was very important to Wendy. This lady is weird about her blue eyes, okay?
She's picky. That's all right.
And you're going to see, and you're like, Kelsey, this is a weird detail. Well, why do we need it? It's going to come up, okay?
Oh.
I just want to, it irks me how obsessed she is with her blue eyes. So on top of having blue eyes, she even wore teal contacts to make her already blue eyes look even more vibrant.
That's giving the White King from Game of Thrones to me with the very creepy glowing blue eyes.
Yes, 100%.
That's what that's giving me. Interesting. Okay.
When Wendy and Dan first met on JDate, they were actually like dating long distance because Dan was living in DC and Wendy was still living in the Miami area. They actually lived in a town called Coral Springs. It's like right outside of Miami.
Okay.
Now, they'd often take weekend trips to visit one another, but for the pair, that wasn't enough. They got to the point where they're like, we need to be living in the same city. Mm-hmm. So eventually, Dan received an offer to teach at FSU in Tallahassee, Florida. And while it wasn't Miami, it was much closer to Miami than DC. So he's like, I think this is going to be good for us. But before he accepts the offer, Dan threw in one little caveat with FSU. He's like, look, if I accept this position, I need you to make a spot for my wifey girlfriend, okay?
Ooh, he's like, I got plans. You got to help me with those.
Exactly. And they did. This is something that they'll do for professors. One of their fellow professors at FSU was interviewed for the Over My Dead Body podcast. And, he talks about, he's like, yeah, I mean, that's something we do. If you have a spouse that can also teach at the school, like we'll make it happen.
The more the merrier.
And I'm like, wow, it must be nice to be lawyer, except for all the hard work. But so they both move to Tallahassee. They start working at FSU together. And very soon after making this move, they were engaged. Now, this was a big deal, this engagement, because like I've said, Dan and Wendy were both very prominent people. Their families were prominent. They were well known in the community. They were both attorneys. So their engagement was a big deal. And it was actually announced in the New York Times in 2006, which is very Gossip Girl of them.
My wedding was in the New York Times?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It is kind of cool.
No, it is. That wasn't sarcasm. That was like, that's cool as fuck.
Yeah.
You're in the New York Times?
Guys, send this podcast episode to your friends so my wedding can be in the New York Times one day.
Yep.
Now, of course, the wedding was a traditional Jewish wedding. And I've never been to a Jewish wedding, but I want to go to one so bad. Because
I've heard only amazing things.
they look so fun in movies.
Yes, and I've heard they have amazing food.
Yes, and they do and I'm sorry because I don't know. Obviously, I'm not Jewish. You can tell by me never going to a Jewish wedding. I don't know what they call it, but like when they lift the people up on the chairs, and then there's part of the wedding ceremony where they wrap like a vase or something, something glass.
And they smash it, yeah.
And they smash it. I'm like, yes, do it. And I love seeing
I love Jewish celebrations.
Yeah, I like seeing different like cultures, different religions, how they celebrate stuff. It's so fun. I went to an Indian wedding. It was like the best thing in my entire life.
I'm mad jealous of that.
It was awesome. And
Looked bougie as hell. They did the chair thing too, didn't they? No?
no, but he rode in on an elephant.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess that is better than a chair.
My point is, I feel like whenever, and maybe the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel like put this into my head, but I just feel like Jewish people know how to celebrate. Like
100%.
Weddings always look awesome.
Funerals are even
bar
like
mitzvahs?
a great fucking celebration.
Bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, funerals, apparently I didn't even know that. And food. They know how to do food too. By the way, guys, before people get mad at us, I understand this is not the purpose, like the food and the celebrating, not the most important parts of a religion.
It's
I
gathering.
get that. I just know that's all I know about is from what I see in movies and stuff. So that I don't know all of the, ins and outs of the beliefs and the worship and things like that. But all I'm just saying is I feel like
seem nice.
I feel like they know how to throw a party, okay?
Yes.
So whether or not it's just Dan and Wendy, they knew how to throw a party. They threw a banger. This wedding was a pricey and elaborate affair, as you would expect.
In the New York Times, yep.
Yes. And both the Markel and Adelson families ended up splitting the cost of the wedding. Now, one of the things that Wendy's family paid for was the catering, which kind of seems like no big deal, really. However, Dan and the rest of the Markel family were shocked when the day of the wedding, the waiters began bringing out food that was not kosher. And they also had meats and cheeses on the same plate, which I think is not kosher. Like you can't have meats and whatever.
And touching, yeah.
Yeah, and they also had pork, which is not kosher. And this was...
Aren't they both Jewish, though?
Yes, but some people, there's different levels. Some people don't eat kosher.
Oh, okay,
they just, they worship and whatever, but they don't follow the rules as strictly. Now, Dan's family they ate kosher.
Kosher as fuck.
They were kosher. And Wendy knew this. Her family knew this. A bunch of people that were at the wedding, like a couple of Dan's friends, were rabbis. All rabbis are eating kosher. I'm pretty sure about that. So Dan was just shocked. And especially, a wedding is a sort of religious ceremony. So you would think that if your religion has really strict rules about food, even if you don't abide by them day to day, you would assume
Have options, maybe.
That you would abide by it for the wedding.
Yeah, or have options, Like,
now, yeah, I don't know what other options they had, but I know that Dan was absolutely mortified by this. Ooh. And one of his friends who was a rabbi actually walked out of the wedding and left. He was so upset.
Great.
So, like I said, Dan and his family are humiliated by this whole thing. And Wendy and her family, they knew that this was going to be an issue. And it was one of those things where it's like, it's not like it costs a ton of extra money to keep it kosher.
Yeah.
Just do it. And so it almost feels purposeful. Like it was a purposeful slight. It wasn't some, we didn't, they knew he ate kosher.
I'm sure that Jewish families that have less money than them were able to keep it kosher.
Exactly. So it's like, why did you not do it? It feels like some weird control, like whatever. And it was Wendy's mother, Donna, who was the one that was kind of in charge of all the catering stuff. So it's like, Donna
throwing shade.
Yeah, she was throwing shade. Ooh. Now, some of the guests, like I said, they left because of this, and others stayed and just celebrated on an empty stomach, but they wouldn't eat anything. I'm sure there were some people who don't eat kosher that did eat stuff, but the point was, this was a huge deal. And imagine this happening. Your new wife's family does this to you on your wedding day. You don't see it coming. It's really like a bomb dropping, but he didn't want to let it spoil the day. So he just decided, he's like, look, I'm going to forgive you guys. We're just going to let this go. And we're just going to celebrate and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Did they mention that in the New York Times article?
Well, no, because the New York Times was just announcing the wedding, that they got engaged. It wasn't like after the wedding.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Now, for those of us who are not Jewish, I thought this might be a good time to learn a little something about a different culture.
Educate yourself.
Because I was wondering, I was like, what is kosher? I know the term kosher, but I don't really know exactly what it means. So
I used to think it was salt. I don't know why, but
I think there's kosher salt is a thing.
Oh.
I do believe so.
Well, then that makes sense for
but
me,
I don't know if it's referring to this type of kosher, but I think so. Now, I'm not giving you an exhaustive overview. I'm giving you a quick little overview. Obviously, I've made it pretty clear I'm not an expert. This is what I have learned from the internet. It says that keeping kosher involves following dietary laws outlined in the Torah. Key rules include eating only certain animals, which are those that chew cud and have split hooves for land animals, and fish with fins and scales. They also need to ensure that meat and dairy are not mixed or eaten together, and they have to use separate utensils for each. Now, the animals also must be slaughtered according to Jewish law, and processed foods must be certified kosher. One of the most well-known examples of kosher rules is that pork is a no-no because the pigs don't have split hooves. Now, the last thing I've got is that fruits and vegetables must be checked for insects, and some products like wine require special certification if produced by non-Jews.
I feel like that makes me want to start eating kosher.
I was going to say, these are good rules.
Yeah, well, that should apply to all foods.
A lot of pork, too, pork is one of the most highly processed meats because, like bacon, I don't know, like salamis and stuff, and like dried meats, all of those highly processed meats, they're one of the leading causes of cancer. Like, I think they're second to smoking or alcohol.
Damn,
I think those are the top three, though, which makes me sad because I love
me my chopsticks.
I know,
those are good as fuck.
I think these are good rules.
Yeah.
Now, after the wedding, Dan and Wendy settled into married life in Tallahassee. Though still in Florida, Tallahassee was a big change for Wendy. She was used to Miami beaches, the vibrant nightlife, and the hustle and bustle of being in a big city. Now, Tallahassee is an inland city. It's about 7 hours northwest of Miami, and it's closer to like the Georgia border. So it's very top of Florida. It's much quieter. It's more family oriented. It doesn't have that hustle and bustle. The culture there is very different. In Miami, you have the nightlife and you have a lot of Hispanic culture. But in Tallahassee, it's more rooted in Southern hospitality. It feels like a Southern state as opposed to on the cusp of Latin America like Miami is. Tallahassee is also known for its history and the college town energy that comes along with FSU, because that is, it's FSU, baby, college town. Woo woo. Sororities and fraternities everywhere, that kind of thing. In comparison to Miami, Wendy seemed to find Tallahassee very, very dull, but she tried to embrace it. According to their friends, Dan and Wendy seemed super happy and in love. They moved to Tallahassee. They're like, we're finally together. We're making this work. They had all these pet names for each other. And even after a few years of marriage, they kept it pretty heavy on the PDA.
I love that for them.
Me
Honeymoon
too.
stage never ends. Well,
it's all downhill from here.
Maybe it does end.
Let it sink in for a minute. This happy this happy picture I'm painting, you feel that?
Yeah.
It's going away.
All right.
So the couple eventually had 2 sons who were less than 2 years apart in age. And once the boys came into the world, Dan's life revolved around them. It was his work and his boys. And he was a very soft, loving, and caring father to his kids.
I love that for you, Dan.
However, Dan Markel was far from a soft man overall. Tenacious in his career, he was known for his abrasive personality and sharp debating skills. And as a lawyer, he thrived on argument and was unapologetically direct, never concerned with sparing anyone's feelings. His critical nature extended both to himself, but also to others. And he was remarkably intelligent. And this was something that he was not shy about letting people know. He really wore his intelligence with confidence and made it impossible for people to ignore. Like, he kind of sounds like the guy that's going to start some philosophical debate with you at the grocery store.
Yeah.
That type of thing. And his abrasiveness did rub some people the wrong way, but there's no denying that it helped Dan excel in his career path, okay? Lawyers, they should be abrasive. They should be direct, whatever. But I think when you start to carry it over to your personal life, you can start to see some issues with that, maybe.
Yeah, not everybody wants to argue.
Right. Now, Dan eventually gained tenure at FSU, and Wendy began working on an anti-human trafficking project. That's what her legal work was in.
Focus.
I don't really have the details, but on top of her legal career, Wendy also took creative writing classes as kind of like a hobby. And she ended up writing and self-publishing a novel that was titled This Is Our Story. Now, though the characters were made up, they had, I don't know what the names were, but made up names. The novel seemed to be largely based on Wendy's own life.
Ooh.
The main character was a human trafficking attorney who was forced to move to a new city that she hates because of her husband and this marriage to a man that she was so sick of and has outgrown. And by the end of the book, she's leaving the husband.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Okay? On top of this, the cover of the book shows an image of a woman's face. I believe it's Wendy's face. I can't 100% tell.
She got blue eyes.
It's all in grayscale.
Oh.
One eye is covered, and the second eye, the pupil is the only thing not in grayscale. It's like neon blue.
Oh.
Okay?
She said the contacts weren't enough. Let me get a picture. That's the only thing
There's
you see.
just black and white, and then it's just one like
Just blue eye.
Yeah. It
Okay.
is it's Night King from Game of Thrones.
Very.
Now, one quote from the book reads, quote, "Did I even love him anymore? Or did I just love the idea of being attached to something? Knowing that I was moving in one particular direction. I was lost without a clear idea of where I might be headed." End quote.
Join the fucking club.
Yeah,
Wendy.
I exactly.
She acts like, oh my God, I'm the only one that feels like this.
I think I wrote that in my journal like 3 years ago. Okay, like that word for word. Now, anyone who knew Dan and Wendy and like then read her book, they would have been able to tell you that Wendy was feeling very overlooked by Dan. He was arguably more successful in his career as an attorney.
Literally,
he had tenure,
arguably.
literally, arguably. It was evident to everyone that she not only felt like Dan looked down on her, but that she was extremely discontent with her life in Tallahassee overall. And when I say it was evident to everybody, I guess I should say it was evident to everyone except for Dan. Because Dan never actually read Wendy's book.
I was going to say, did he ever read the book?
Or any of her essays from her creative writing class.
Well, that's not very nice.
Now, it's not that Dan wasn't at all supportive. He did promote the book on his popular online blog. However, he took himself very seriously as an intellectual, and intellectuals do not have time for fiction. Dan was a busy man, and if he was going to spend time reading, it would be academic literature and nonfiction only.
Nothing my wife wrote.
Exactly. So to be clear, Dan never stated this explicitly, but this is the impression that he left on his friends. This is what his friends were saying about it after the fact. They're like, Dan just thought that it was, fiction is
He was
a
above
waste of time. He was above it. And according to one of Wendy's friends, who was also interviewed for the Over My Dead Body podcast, when the book was published with good reviews and Dan still didn't read it, she says, quote, "It was a mortal wound for Wendy," end quote.
Ouch.
Because I got the impression it seemed like Wendy thought, oh, well, he doesn't care. But once it's published and like it's a success,
yeah, like,
he'll read it and he'll care and he'll take it seriously. But he still didn't. And look,
well,
Dan Markel,
he did tell her, I'm not interested. So
this is what I'm going to say. Dan Markel is our victim here. We try not to speak ill of the dead. But I'm also like, let's be realistic. This is a dick move.
Yeah, it is pretty rude.
Like, support your spouse.
Yeah.
I skim it. Read a few
100%.
chapters. Something. I understand.
Read the
he's very
fucking
busy.
summary on the back of the book.
Yeah,
the
like,
least you could do.
Yeah, and then to
Yeah.
like, I almost feel like to then promote it on your blog that's really popular. It's almost more of a dick move because it's like, oh, you want to look like you're the supportive husband, but you're not being the supportive husband.
It's like, hey, read this book that I haven't read.
Yeah. It would be like if you started a true crime podcast and your boyfriend didn't listen to it. No, I'm teasing. But like, support your spouse, okay? Support your spouse. Even if it's not your thing, you don't have to go full throttle, but like go medium throttle. Like, I'm not saying Dan was a horrible person. I'm just saying this, of course, is going to cause some issues in your relationship when you don't support your spouse.
Their
like that.
endeavors. Yeah.
Now, maybe if he had read some of her writing, he wouldn't have been so absolutely and utterly shocked when he returned home from a business trip to find an empty house and divorce papers lying on his bed.
Ooh, she did the Irish goodbye.
She did do the Irish goodbye.
Yikes.
And without saying a word to Dan, Wendy had taken both of their children and all of their belongings and left Dan.
Well, that's a little dramatic, just because you didn't read her book.
I don't think it's just because of the book. I think the book was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was or just an example of one big thing, but there seemed to be a lot more going on. It was like Dan was really, he was more successful, and I think he really let Wendy know that. And he wasn't treating her as an equal. He wasn't taking her seriously.
Okay.
So
I mean, that's warranted then, I guess, but
I don't blame her for leaving him.
it's the
I don't
way
know
she did it.
I don't know if this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But spoiler alert, Wendy is an asshole.
Oh. I could have seen that coming from a mile away.
Wendy's an asshole. We're going to get there. But like, I will say, I don't blame her for leaving him.
Okay.
But the metaphor Dan used to describe this incident was Pearl Harbor. He's basically like, she Pearl Harbored me. It was a blitz attack. I had no idea it was coming. Like, he acted like he literally didn't know that the relationship wasn't going well.
To that, sir, I say false.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, well,
no way you couldn't have known.
I just feel like if your relationship is going so badly that you're broken up with and you're completely blindsided, you weren't paying enough attention.
That's my thing, is that he had to have obviously been so focused on himself that he didn't realize nobody around him was happy.
And I'm sure there's a bunch of scenarios where this isn't the case, but I'm talking about this case in particular. It's like, I feel like he wasn't paying close enough attention. Now, he was completely devastated by this. By all of his friends say that. They're like, he was just like in shambles. And he even sent out a big email chain to friends to tell them what had happened and to make it clear that he was going to try and win her back. And he signed the email, quote, "Love mightily while you can," end quote. And I was like, I love a man in his feels.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, that's good. And I think, we always talk about what effect true crime has on us and like what we should take from it. And I think that's what we should take from it.
That's
Love mightily while you can. I like that.
YOLO.
I was gonna see if we could do something with love mightily while you can, like YOLO, like making it doesn't work. It's all consonants. Now, even more devastating for Dan, for 2 weeks after she left, Dan had no idea where his kids were and wasn't able to speak a word to them. So Wendy takes the kids. She won't answer the phone. He doesn't know where they are, like nothing. So he didn't get to talk to his kids for 2 weeks. And I'm sure anyone who has kids knows that like, that is devastating.
Yeah, that's crushing, especially how obsessed he was with his kids.
Right, exactly. And for Wendy, the divorce really wasn't just about leaving Dan. It was about leaving this life that she had gotten stuck in and going back to her old life. And part of that included getting out of Tallahassee that she found so dull and getting back to the life in Miami that she missed so much. And when it became clear to Dan that Wendy was not coming back and that she was going to try and take his boys and move 6 hours away from him, almost 7 hours away, it was no holds barred for Dan. He was extremely worried that his boys would not be raised properly by Wendy according to his Jewish faith and customs, because he was definitely more devout than Wendy was. He was much more serious about the laws of Judaism, and he wanted his boys to be raised the way he was raised, not the way Wendy was raised.
Okay.
And of course, even if he thought she would raise them properly when it came to the religion, he just didn't want to be away from his kids either way. He's like, I don't want my kids almost 7 hours away.
Yeah.
Now, after a true battle in the courtroom, their divorce was finalized on July 31st, 2013, and Dan and Wendy were given 50-50 custody. Now, Dan had to pay child support and a lump sum of $120,000 to Wendy. Wendy got to keep her car, and Dan got the house, which I assume she was okay with this because the house was in Tallahassee, and she's dying to leave Tallahassee. But unfortunately for Wendy, the court prohibited her from moving to Coral Springs because it would make this 50-50 custody agreement like almost impossible. You can't have the kids going back and forth once a week.
7 hours.
Almost 7 hours.
Yeah.
So with that decision, Wendy was shattered, but also just seething with rage. She felt like she was finally free from Dan, but she remained trapped in that life that she wanted to get out of because she's still stuck in Tallahassee. She's still away from her family. And to Wendy, the city felt like a lifeless prison, and it was just condemning her to this monotonous and joyless existence, at least until her youngest son turned 18, and then she would be free from this custody agreement. But at the time, that was 16 years away. The youngest son was 2 years old. So
he was only 2. Aw.
And you know what? I have lived out of state and gotten to the point where like all I wanted to do was move home, and I was dying to move home. And I don't feel for Wendy, but if I had no more information than what I've just given you guys right now, I would feel for her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because that's rough.
Yeah.
But also, figure it out. I'm sorry.
Yep. Make do.
Life is hard sometimes.
Gotta trudge through it, yeah. You made the choice to leave. You couldn't, I mean, did she expect to get full custody of the kids? Like, is that what her goal was?
I think so. I think so. Or like
shitty.
at least primary custody. Now, adding to the tension, Dan learned that Wendy's mother, Donna, had made some disparaging comments about him to the boys. And in response, he filed a court motion requesting that any visits between the boys and their grandmother, Donna, must be supervised. And the court granted this request, which made it impossible for Wendy to bring the boys to stay with her parents for visits. Because when she would go back to Coral Springs, Miami area, she would stay at their house. Well, now she can't do that. Not with the boys with her.
Well, maybe your mom shouldn't have been talking shit.
Yeah, Donna's... If you didn't learn this from the whole kosher at the wedding thing, she is a piece of work. Now, Dan's final blow came when he filed a motion for sanctions, which is basically accusing Wendy and her attorney of being, quote, less than forthcoming, end quote, about financial matters in their settlement agreement. So really what this is, when he's filing these sanctions, it's an implication, and the implication was clear. It is that Wendy was allegedly concealing assets and withholding crucial financial information to shield them from the divorce.
Well.
So he's accusing her of hiding money.
Yeah.
Okay? You're not allowed to hide money from the government. They don't like that. They'll find out. And if proven, this act would not only constitute fraud, but would also carry legal consequences extending beyond the divorce proceedings and possibly leading to Wendy being disbarred.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's pretty serious.
If not, and depending on, what she was hiding and how much, you can go to jail or prison for financial fraud like that.
Oh, yeah.
So even if the sanctions were the end of it, like him just filing those sanctions even
made her look real bad.
Real bad. Oof. Huge stain on her legal career. You don't want your attorney to be accused of maybe
committing fraud.
Yes. So, even if there were no horrible repercussions from this was a big slap in the face for Wendy.
Yay.
And Wendy wasn't the only one seeing red over this situation. Her entire family was also irate. Ooh. Now, Wendy was extremely close with her family, extremely close. Extremely, in a weird way, I would say, in my opinion.
Okay.
Now, at least with her, and I say that as someone who's very close with their family, okay? This shit gets weird, okay? So she was extremely close with her parents and her brother, Charlie. Her oldest brother, Rob, however, he used to be weirdly extremely close with the family. But at this point in time, he was completely estranged from the family because he had married a Gentile woman, non-Jewish woman. That was a big no-no for Harvey and Donna Adelson. They're like, our kids
absolutely the fuck not
have to marry Jewish people, which is very interesting that they're so gung-ho about this.
But then her mom was like, oh, let's just not do kosher at your wedding.
Right. It's like, well, it doesn't seem like the religion matters to you that much. And I'm not saying that if you're Jewish and you don't eat kosher, that religion doesn't matter to you. I'm talking about Donna specifically, because we're going to get to a point where it's not just the kosher thing at the wedding. There's one point where during the divorce proceedings, and I don't know when it's going to come up in my script, but during the divorce proceedings, Donna's literally sending messages. I think it was emails maybe to Wendy saying, we should convert the boys to Christianity just to piss Dan off. And she was being pretty serious about it. It sounded
no wonder he had you supervised with visits to their kids.
Right. So it's just weird though that the parent that Donna and Harvey are so our kids have to marry, people who are Jewish. But then they're like, but we should convert our grandsons to a different religion just to piss off their father.
That's wild.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, while the divorce was finalized in July of 2013, the litigation regarding the sanctions on Wendy for hiding this money, and then all the litigation regarding the supervised visits with her mom, they went on past the divorce. So even though the divorce is finalized, they're still battling it out in court over other things related to the divorce, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But that didn't really stop either party from moving on after the dissolution of the marriage. So Dan dated around for a bit, but eventually got serious with a woman named Anne. By the way, I cannot find her name written anywhere. I only have found it in police interrogation videos. And I can't tell if it's Annie or Amy. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Half the time I'm like, it's Annie. And then someone says, I'm like, no, it's definitely Amy. And then they'll say it again. And I'm like, it's Annie. Because the audio quality is not great. So It's either Annie or Amy. But I'm pretty sure I'm leaning more towards Annie.
Okay.
So Annie Amy was a very successful attorney from New York. Much more successful than Wendy, many would say.
Which he upgraded.
Yeah, which sucks.
Sucks for Wendy.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. It does suck for.
But hey.
Which, by the way, if you're going through a breakup and you feel like your ex upgraded, look at the time frame here, because if it's real quick after the breakup, you're gonna win in the long run. Okay.
Yeah.
You gotta you'll be all right. But for this purpose of this story, I think it's funny. So even though it was kind of a slap in the face for Wendy, Wendy moved on as well. And by March of 2014, she had a boyfriend named Jeff Lacoste. Now, Jeff had a PhD in social work, and like Dan and Wendy, he was a professor at FSU. And on top of teaching, Jeff also conducted research studies which focus on mental health and psychiatric medications. So he knows some stuff about the mind, is what I'm trying to say. He's not like Dan and Wendy. They're very legal, straight-laced by the books. He's more of...
Loosey-goosey.
He's a little bit more loosey-goosey, but still a very strict academic. Mm-hmm. Now, by July of 2014... it had been a year since the divorce, and Dan and Wendy both seemed to be settling into their separate lives. On the morning of Friday, July 18th, Dan dropped the boys off at daycare around 9 a.m., and then he headed to the gym. Around 10:30, he got in the car to head home from the gym, and he decides to call his colleague named Stuart Schlazer on his drive home. Now, Dan had just found out that Wendy was trying to enroll the boys in a different school. So he was calling Stuart to vent. He's like, "You're never this bitch."
I was going to say, this,
guess
you
what
would
she
never
did now.
guess.
Now,
I'm sure Stuart's like, what the fuck did this bitch do now? What's next?
Yeah. Now, midway through the conversation, Dan interrupted Schlazer, and he said something along the lines of like, "Okay, hold on. I'm pulling into my driveway, and there's someone I don't recognize here."
Uh-oh.
And Dan put the phone down. And then moments later, Schlazer heard a loud noise followed by labored breathing. What he didn't realize was that Dan Markel, on the other side of this phone line, had been shot twice through the closed window of his car, once in the forehead and once in the cheek. Now, we already know that the neighbor heard this loud noise. He ran out to see what was going on. And the neighbor later tells police that he saw a silver Toyota Prius driving away from the scene. Like a silvery green. Why is it
always a Prius?
Dude, I don't know. Well, what's funny is my grandma has a silvery green Toyota Prius, so I can it wasn't her.
Okay.
It wasn't Nana. But he tells police, he's like, yeah, as I was coming out, I saw this silvery green Toyota Prius leaving the scene. Mm-hmm. And he's like, but the side mirror, it looks funny. Okay, we're going to get back to the side mirror.
Okay.
Now, when he noticed Markel's garage open, he's like, maybe a robbery. Let me go over, see what happens. This is when he finds Dan and he calls 911.
What was Stuart doing? Was he just like, hello, 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 and then didn't hear anything and hung up?
Yeah, I think that the way he describes it, when he said it's just like a loud noise, then I heard breathe, it didn't sound like a gunshot to him.
It was probably a bunch of static and the glass.
I don't think he had he didn't seem to have like the impression like, holy shit, I need to call 911, something horrible happened. He was just like, what is going on? Like, I don't know if he tried to call Dan back or not, but upon arriving at the hospital, like I said earlier, it quickly became clear that Dan Markel's injuries would be fatal. And as the devastating news spread among his friends and family, one question loomed amongst them. Who would want to kill someone like Dan Markel? Now, like I said, he's a well-respected attorney and a scholar who works primarily in academia. So it's unlikely that he's going to be creating all these enemies as if he was like a prosecutor or a defense attorney or anything like that. And sure, Dan could be abrasive and even a touch pompous, some might say, but not in a way that warranted like deep-seated animosity. At most, his demeanor might have been intimidating or like off-putting where you're like, that guy's kind of full of himself type of thing, but certainly not enough to provoke being murdered. And so police knew that they had to notify Wendy of Dan's death because they've got him at the hospital and she's kind of the closest person because his family is still up in Canada. And of course, being the ex-wife, the new ex-wife, because this is about a year after the divorce, they wanted to question her as well so they could rule her out.
Where's Annie during this? They didn't call her?
So, well, Annie lives in New York. So I believe she was in New York at the time of the murder. Now, for Wendy, the morning of July 18th, 2014, just began as a normal day. Just after 8 a.m., she spoke on the phone with her mom very briefly for just over 30 seconds. A little before 9 a.m., a repairman came to work on her TV that her brother Charlie had gifted her after her divorce. Wendy also spoke with her brother on the phone that morning for, there was 2 different phone calls. I think in total it was about like 19 minutes that they spoke on the phone. Okay. Now, some sources say that it was while the repairman was still at Wendy's house that she was on the phone with her brother. And others say that it was after the repairman left the house at around 10 a.m. So we don't know. I don't know exactly when they spoke on the phone, but I do know it's about 19 minutes over those 2 calls. Now, Wendy later tells police that she left the house around 12:15 to run an errand, which was to pick up a bottle of bourbon as a gift for a friend, because this friend had just bought a new house and she was having like a stock the bar party. Mm-hmm. And Wendy talks about this in her interview. I don't know if I'm going to play it or not. I can't remember if I put it in the clips. She's talking about this bottle of bourbon. She goes, I was trying to buy this bourbon. I don't know bourbon. It's Bulleit, Bullet bourbon. I don't know why it irked me the way she describes this bourbon. I'm like, shut up, Wendy. Anyway, so she tells police that around 12:15 she runs out to buy this bottle of bourbon, and then after getting the bottle of bourbon, she went to lunch to catch up with some friends. However, their little yap sesh luncheon was interrupted by police, who asked Wendy to come down to the station with them. Now, Wendy complied, but like the police
That's gotta be awkward.
Well, they didn't tell her what was happening.
Oh.
She didn't know why she was going to the police station. And it wasn't...
They didn't Mirandize her?
No.
Oh, ooh.
Well, she wasn't being arrested. They were just trying to interview her.
Oh.
So it wasn't until just before 2:45 p.m. that day when Wendy's sitting in the interrogation room waiting for the detective to come in. She checks her voicemail, and she has a voicemail from her old real estate agent. And this is the one that sold her and Dan the house that Dan lived in at the time. Mm-hmm. And it's the real estate agent. And she's like, hey, I think something's going on at your old house.
Yeah, it's getting a little fishy.
It's Lisa Curie. It is Friday, and I feel like an idiot doing this, but I just heard that there was a shooting over on Trescott, and I promise I'm not trying to be dramatic or even nosy. I don't know, just checking on you, my friend. I hope all is well. I hope your sweet boys are well, and if there's anything you need, let me know. It just ran a chill down my spine when I heard that there was something going on Trescott. All right, 212-3083. Hope all is well, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
There was a shooting at your home or your ex-husband's home at 2116 Trescott. Okay. Your ex-husband, Daniel, all right, has been taken to the hospital. He's not going to survive.
Oh my God.
Okay.
What happened?
Well, before we get into everything, I have to establish where you were and who you were with and so forth. Okay. And then once we've established all that, I can give you more details.
Okay.
Do you understand why I wanted you to come here before I discuss this?
Oh my God.
Damn.
So, as you can hear, Wendy's really upset.
I just talked to him this morning. I don't know what happened.
She's shocked. And I'm not.
First of all, I love that her name's Wendy because I fucking hate the Wendy that's in Ozark.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's what Tyler's always talking about, how much he hates it.
Dude, she's the worst.
So the officer's like, look, before we get into what happened, I need you to tell me about your day, which I kind of did a little bit of an overview of Wendy's day just so you can follow, because I know the audio is not great. So I told you a little bit of this, but I think you need to hear it from Wendy.
I ran out of time. I did laundry, and then I left the house around noon.
To go to the liquor store and stuff for the party.
Yeah.
Okay, you went down which road you said?
I went down Trescott.
Okay.
I saw a police car there, and I just thought it was blocked, so I just turned around and drove to, I went down the rest of Centerville, went up Benton, took Benton across, went to ABC Liquors, bought the bourbon.
I'm a little confused. You're up on Centerville Road. What's your purpose of driving down Trescott?
It's usually the shortcut to get to Monroe.
To get to Monroe?
I usually take it as a cut through to get to Thomasville or Monroe.
Okay, all right, so
I don't know why I said Monroe. I was thinking Mosaic, Monroe, Thomasville.
Okay, so when you come down into town on Centerville?
I almost always cut through Trescott.
Trescott and just drive by your old house?
Well, I do it as a way of like coming to terms with the divorce. But yeah, sometimes I drive there. If I'm too sad, I drive around.
Okay.
If the kids aren't home and I know they're not home, I feel better about driving by the house. But yeah, it's shorter and I just usually drive by.
It's shorter than going all the way down to Benton?
All the way down Centerville and around Benton. It's just a shortcut I always took.
Okay, so you turned around and went back to Centerville, I take it?
Yeah.
Down to Benton and went to the liquor store down there on Thomasville?
Yeah.
The one at Benton Road?
ABC Liquors, it's at Benton. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Did you make a purchase there?
Yeah.
And that was sometime after 12?
Probably 12:30.
Okay.
So in case you're not catching what he's throwing, she said she drove down Trescott. This is where Dan's house was. It was on Trescott Drive or Avenue. And she said, I saw the road blocked off. Oh my God, I didn't realize. And basically he's like, why were you going down Trescott? She's like, oh, I take it. It's the shortcut to, I can't remember what she says, Monroe. He's like, to Monroe? Because no, it's not the shortcut. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense. And that's what she goes, well, sometimes I just drive around and
she's basically saying that she stalked her ex-husband's house.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, when the kids aren't there, I just like to drive by just to like come to terms with it.
Weird.
But that was my first red flag when she was like, yeah, I saw the cops and I just like turned around. Like, wouldn't you be like, what's going on? This is my ex-husband's street. My kids stay here.
And which, by the way, Dan had the kids this week. Because if you remember when we talked about Dan's day, he dropped the kids off at daycare and then he went to the gym. So
wouldn't you be more concerned?
If you saw police on the streets where your children lived with their father, wouldn't you call him
maybe
and say, what's going on? Are the kids okay? Interesting. And by the way, part of the whiny crying she was doing in the first clip I played, she was saying, I just messaged him. She had messaged him that morning, which we're going to get to. But basically, she had messaged him about one of the kids' school. Mm-hmm. And that's why Dan called his friend to vent about it.
To bitch about it, yeah.
But interesting.
Okay. All right. Did you make a purchase there?
Yeah.
And that was sometime after 12?
Probably 12:30.
Okay. All right.
And I talked to a guy there because I don't really buy much alcohol, and so they wanted bourbon, and I asked the guy. We had a whole conversation about bourbon and my eyes. Like,
your eyes?
He just said, your eyes are really blue.
Right.
And
contacts?
I do.
Okay.
But I just remembered it.
Right.
So I bought the bourbon and got some gas on Thomasville and met my friends at Mosaic.
Which gas station did you...
The fucking audacity!
He
just complimented my eyes.
I love that the police officer...
He checked her so quick. You got contacts?
Yes.
She's like, yeah, but he really thought they were great.
By the way, guys, I like to leave a little bit of suspense for you as much as possible, but I guess I will give you a spoiler. We don't know for sure, but in my personal opinion, I think maybe Wendy allegedly... No, not done it.
She had somebody done it.
You gotta watch yourself. We're popular now. I think she allegedly maybe had something to do with this, allegedly maybe. Okay? So, yeah, don't think we're laughing at like a grieving person. Maybe she is grieving a little bit, but anyway, back to it.
You go to on Thomasville?
The one that's, I always forget the name, but the one that's close to the cross street. It's right next to the Goodwill.
Okay.
You're heading north on Thomasville. It's on your right.
Okay, just past the Goodwill
Just
place?
past the Goodwill. It's close to the intersection there.
Okay, and then from that point, you went straight to the...
Went to Mosaic.
Mosaic restaurant?
And met friends there. I used to have kind of a steady Friday meeting, and I hadn't seen my 2 friends in a while. And so we had made plans to meet up.
What time did you get to Mosaic?
About 1. I was a little late. We were supposed to meet at 1, and I got there a few minutes after.
Okay. All right. I know it's cold in here. Okay.
I think that's not why.
Okay. I know it's part of it, but...
Sorry, he was saying I know it's cold in here because she's like shivering in the video. But like you can hear it kind of... I think at first glance, if I didn't already give you information about my opinion, you'd be like, she sounds genuinely upset.
Yeah.
Now, the eyes thing, I can't.
That sent me.
Now, during the interview, the detective asks Wendy about Dan's new girlfriend, who, like I said, was a law professor at NYU. And he asks if his relationship with her was what caused Dan and Wendy to divorce. Like, was Dan cheating on you with this woman or what? And Wendy says no. But she also adds some speculation. She takes it further than just answering his question.
Well, let me ask you something. Does his relationship with her have anything to do with your all's divorce?
No.
No, it had nothing to do with an extramarital affair or anything?
No, but the only thing I'm thinking is Amy. I don't know what Amy's whole divorce situation is like, so if you're going to think of someone who's not thrilled with Danny, I don't know how happy her husband or ex-husband is with the situation.
Do you know anything about him?
I don't know anything about him.
Okay. So you know Amy Adler, she's a professor at NYU. She was down here from the end of June through the first part of July.
I think just a few days.
Right.
Yeah. Well, he's in New York. In the summertime, we have a week on, week off schedule with the boys. So whenever I have them for a week, he goes up to New York for a week. So he's been spending a lot of time up there.
Of that nature.
He didn't tell me about it, but I feel like he was pretty vocal with like our friends and people probably since December about her being his girlfriend. So.
Okay. Who would be his best friend?
When we were still together, he had 2 best friends. Neither of them are in Tallahassee. Oh my god, I'm completely blanking on their last names right now.
That's okay.
Matt Price, that was his best man at our wedding. And Josh Berman, Matt is in DC and Josh is in New York. Actually, he has a friend, I don't know if they're so close, but he and the boys sleep over at their house a lot. They're in Cairo, Georgia.
Okay.
That's probably his closest friend here.
Do you know his name?
His name's Alex Greenberg. He's a veterinarian in town.
Is that here in town?
Mm-hmm. And I think
Do you know where his office is?
I don't, maybe.
He's a vet in Cairo.
He's in Cairo.
Okay. You're being very helpful. Okay. All the shock, I know, is coming to you all at once. Okay.
I don't know who would do this.
Okay. Well, it appears from what we've seen so far that someone intentionally hurt Danny. Okay, intentionally. Okay, I don't think.
You don't know who it is?
No, and I don't
What if
think.
they come after the boys?
I don't think that's going to be. I have no indication at this time that that's a threat. Okay, but the boys are going to stay with you. You're not going back over to Trescott. Okay.
No, I don't live.
I love that she's like, I don't know any of his best friends, but like, here's all their names and their occupations and their last names and everything else that has to do with their entire lives. Yeah. But where's Stuart? She doesn't know Stuart.
Oh, yeah. Well, Stuart was like someone he worked with, so I don't know.
Oh. I love that. He's like, did he tell you this? And her name is Amy. That's what I was saying.
No, I swear though, she says it again and she's saying Annie.
Really?
I swear. Yeah, I don't have like a specific clip. And then there's another person that we're going to listen to and they say Annie, but I feel like she probably knows better than this other person. So I don't know. Maybe Amy. But so Wendy starts to speculate that maybe she's like, I don't know who would do this. But she later goes on to say, I don't know what Amy's situation is with her ex-husband because Amy was also recently divorced. Mm-hmm. So she's like, I don't know. Like, unless it was Amy's.
She's like trying to plant a seed.
Right. Now, you heard her ask something about the boys. Like, what if they come after the boys? Well, just know that this clip about the boys isn't until 20 minutes into this interview, okay? Again, the boys were staying with Dan that week. So she hadn't seen them all day, at least. And I don't think she had seen them for a few days. So Dan, they're telling you there's a shooting at your house. Dan's not going to make it, whatever. And she doesn't ask about her kids for the next 20 minutes. Weird. You would think that would be your first question. Like, I need to go see my kids. I don't know. I don't have kids, so I don't know. But I'm just trying to close my eyes and picture it. And I would be like, where the fuck are my kids? Mm-hmm. So they then ask her if they can take her phone. Like, we need to see your phone, whatever. She admits, like, you know, her and Danny had been messaging, whatever. And she's like, yeah, whatever you need. I'm just going to play it. I'm putting it on 1.5 speed because she's talking slow, okay?
Just trying to figure out what to say.
I have a lot of friends. How do you know that?
Well, you had two of them up there for a last-minute luxury, right?
Last minute?
Well, I mean, you went up there, you're sitting with them. You have friends.
I do. What I meant by it is that Danny didn't treat me very well. And I'm so scared that maybe someone did this. Not because they hate Danny, but because they thought this was good somehow.
Oh, are you saying that you think maybe one of your friends would have done something like this?
Who would do this?
I don't know. That's why you're here, and that's why we're talking.
Who would do this? My friends.
Yeah, I have so many friends.
Ask someone to do something like this?
Not in a million years.
Okay. Do you think someone would do this for your benefit without asking you?
No.
What good does it serve?
I mean, my brother, the one, his name's Charlie, the one I'm really close to, he makes a lot of jokes in bad taste, and it was a joke he made. He bought a TV for me this morning that got broken, and then I was talking to him about whether it made sense to pay to fix it or whether I should get a new one, and it was always his joke that he knew Danny treated me badly, and it was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman, and it was cheaper to get you this TV, so instead I got you this TV. I mean, he would never. He's my big...
Oh my God.
Who would do this? I have a lot of friends. Well, did you ask a friend to do this? No, I would never. Would someone do this for you? No. Well, why'd you bring it up? Then she says, well, and my brother Charlie also made a joke that he looked into hiring a hitman, but buying me a TV was cheaper. Would your brother ever do this? No, he would never. Why are you bringing it up then, Wendy?
When she was like, I have so many friends, like maybe it was one of them just trying to like be nice to me. What the fuck?
Yeah, like weird.
We know you have friends, Wendy. We know.
Weird thing to say.
We
So
know you have
weird.
friends. We already talked to him.
She keeps blabbing. Hold on.
Oh, let's just hear it.
big brother, and he's been taking care of me since I was little, but he would never. And I told that to the repair guy this morning.
Right. That's okay.
He said, he asked me how much it cost, and I said I didn't know because it was a gift, because my brother said it was cheaper than a hitman. It was my divorce present.
Okay.
Such a horror.
She told them, and by okay,
A TV repairman.
we're laughing at how ridiculous this lady is for telling this to the police. We're not laughing at someone being murdered. But the morning that her ex-husband was murdered, a TV repairman came to her house. The TV repairman asked her how much the TV cost her, and she said, I don't know. My brother bought it for me as a divorce present because he said it was cheaper than hiring a hitman.
Like,
She
what?
says this literally 2 hours before Dan is murdered. What are the odds? Tell me what the odds are.
Dude.
How often are you making the joke that that would just be a coincidence?
Not ever, because you shouldn't be making them in the first place.
That, by the way, like, that is a funny joke. Like, if no one died, that would be a funny joke. That's the type of joke in my personal life about people, when people actually are not dying and whatever. But, like, weird.
But then somebody made the joke about dies, and you.
But also,
would you bring it up in the fucking interrogation room? No.
I was actually, I don't know. I kind of feel like I would, because I'd be like, by the way, I made this. But like,
that's not how she was taking. I don't think that's how she was approaching that.
I'm also learning from this case that I should probably stop making those jokes just in case something happens to somebody around me. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Okay, continue.
Horrible thing to say. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
But even my family, who felt like I had been mistreated, would never do something like this. Never.
Well, you guys have been divorced for over a year. Has there been any type of abuse in that time?
Of him towards me?
Yeah.
No. He's litigious, and we have an ongoing case because the house. It shouldn't be in my name anymore. But when we settled the case over divorce, he said, or one of the agreements the court said was, Danny wanted to stay in the house. They said, you can have the house, but you need to pay her half of the amount of what the house is worth. And he agreed to it, and then months passed, and he just never paid me. And so we have ongoing litigation where I filed a motion in the court to have him pay me what he said he would, and he filed a counter motion for sanctions against my attorney because he thought that she did something wrong, which she didn't. But so, I mean, she withdrew from the case and was going to serve as a witness, so she's not going to lash out at him for it. She's using the legal process to do it. My parents are, very angry towards him. But even when they're around my kids, they would never say a bad word about my kid's father. They're really, really careful about that.
False.
Lie.
That's false.
Lie.
She's got the court records to prove it, too.
Yes. So, as you can see, she's just like, he's not
bullshitting
asking
out of her ass, just making shit up left and right.
Dude, because he's not even asking her, like, direct questions. She just keeps bringing up people who maybe did it, and she's like, but no, they would never. And it's all centered around her. Like, they would do it for
even she's like, oh, Dan treated me so horribly.
She said, even my family who like really didn't like him because he treated me so horribly,
they would never do anything to him.
Yeah. And it's like, why would they assume that your family, that's just a weird place to go. Like, I just feel like if I were in her spot, it wouldn't even cross my mind that the police would think my family would be. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Weird.
I thought it was weird when she was like, when he was asking if he if there was any abuse after the divorce was settled. She was like, from me? No.
She just all around these interviews. By the way, this interview that they do the first day, this is the day that Dan is shot. It's 4.5 hours long.
Whoa.
I watched it all.
Was she the one that's talking most of the time?
Yes.
Yeah.
I watched like almost 10 hours of interviews for this case. It is crazy. I did watch them at 1.5 speed, which I'm now playing them at 1.5 speed to like, just for the sake of your guys' time.
She's talking really slow then, because that sounded like normal speed.
Which I guess if you're like upset and you're crying,
it's hard to get it out, yeah.
But she's also like, so she starts telling the officers, like, again, she's saying all this weird stuff, like out of nowhere, like, my family would never, my friends would never. It's like, well, then why are you mentioning them?
Yeah.
Weird. Like, why wouldn't you just be like, I have no idea. Like, I
She's
can't
just,
think of a single person that would do this.
Yeah, she's just like dumping all of this information. This unnecessary information.
To be devil's advocate, obviously we've never been in that position, so I don't know what I would do. But it just seems odd. And at one point, she starts talking about her brother. So let's get to that.
Charlie.
That's what I have to find out.
To do something like this.
The brother that you're real close to, I have to do a lot of elimination at the same time. The brother that you're really close to, the one that joked about the TV and everything, what'd you say his name was?
Charlie.
Charlie, and he's in Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what kind of car he has.
He has like 5 cars.
Tell me all of them.
He drives it. I think one of them is an unmarked police car.
Oh, really?
He's a bit of a character.
Okay.
So I don't know what he's driving at the time.
Right.
But I'll tell you, he's a periodontist, and he has this practice where he works from early in the morning till late at night. So if you ever wanted to find his whereabouts, he's working all day long until early in the morning till late at night, always driving to a different office, working.
Well, he goes to different offices?
Yeah, he works in different offices all over South Florida, does implants for people. And he works really hard all the time. He has a girlfriend, so he's pretty much accounted for all the time.
Charlie, was that his first name?
Charlie's his first name.
Not Charles?
So the detective asks her, what kind of car does your brother drive? And she goes from, without being prompted, that was the only question he asked. She goes, he's got 5 different cars, but he's a dentist. He works all the time. So if you ever want to know where he is, you want to track his whereabouts, he's always working. He goes in between offices.
He's got a girlfriend.
And he has this girlfriend. So he's like really busy
He's
all
booked
the
and
time.
busy.
And she goes, if you're looking into his whereabouts, it's like, again.
That's not what he asked you.
Again, why are you like, I get that he is saying like, oh, we need to eliminate him as a suspect. So I don't know, like maybe, and she is an attorney. And I guess like as someone who's super obsessed with true crime, like I might give that level of detail to that question too, because I'm like, I know what you want to know.
But that's what like is crazy to me because she is an attorney and I feel like she would know. She's been in the, I mean, what kind of attorney was she though? Like criminal case attorneys?
I don't know. She did like anti-human trafficking campaigns.
So she would know.
Which is like, yeah, I guess. So maybe it's not as weird that she's giving all of this information, but I don't know. I just, at first, the first time I heard it, I was like, what? Like, what?
That's a lot of information.
I was like, I just felt like I'm the type of person, I can't keep my mouth shut. Like, I'm really good at keeping other people's secrets, but like I say way too much. Like I cannot stop. I blab. I have no secrets because I tell everybody everything. And when she's doing this interview, that's kind of how I felt about her. Like she seems like she can't shut up.
Yeah.
Like she's just going, and she's saying, and you're like,
just,
stop
word
it,
vomiting.
Wendy.
Yeah.
Yes, she's word vomiting. You're like, Wendy, you're saying too much right now.
Yeah, like shut the fuck up, Wendy, for 5 seconds maybe.
I made this way too long, bro. I got caught up in the drama. So she is giving them all of Charlie's whereabouts and whatever. And then she asks the detective if he's going to read her Miranda rights. So like Emily said, she's like, she wasn't Mirandized. And it's like, nope. But then
she wasn't under arrest or she wasn't, I don't know. She wasn't a suspect at the time, right? Or was she?
Well, that's the thing is, I just feel like she's obviously assuming that she is like, that they're interrogating her as a suspect because she's asking, are you going to Mirandize me? And she's giving way more information than they're asking and whatever. And she says, his family is going to think I did it.
Well,
and it's like, well, why would they think you did it, Wendy? Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of people go through divorces and you wouldn't assume that one of them is going to kill the other. And maybe the police might assume that just because statistically, but
your family and friends, though,
yeah, and like your ex's family and friends, that is just wild. And the thing is when she asks about this is about 30 minutes into the interview. She starts asking, are you going to Mirandize me? That seems real. So it's not like she's at the end of this 4.5 hour interview and they're like really pressing her and getting, like, well, that doesn't make sense or what, you know what I mean? He's the way he's asking your questions, he's being very much like, I need to rule you out, but you're probably grieving the situation. He's very like, I just feel like he's not doing anything to give her the impression that she is a suspect. And
no, she's doing that herself.
And then she goes and says his family is, because they're asking for like his parents' phone numbers and stuff so they can like notify them. And she goes, his family's they're going to think I did it. Why? First of all, why would they think you did it? Second of all, why do you think that they think you would do it? And third of all, why are you telling police that they're going to think that you did it? And the pattern I see here, and again, totally my opinion, allegedly, reportedly, probably, maybe, whatever. It seems like she's trying to get ahead of things. This is going to come out. Let me get ahead of it. She made this joke to the repairman. Let me get ahead of that. And again, if it was just a joke and she had nothing to do with this, that does make sense. I get that. But it's just a lot of word vomit that is coming out that you're like, Wendy, you're doing too much right now.
Yeah.
You're getting ahead of a lot.
Take 8 steps back there, Wendy.
Which, again, you could be devil's advocate and be like, well, she's a lawyer and
so she like knows the process.
She thinks and whatever. But it just seems weird.
To me, I feel like she's a lawyer, so she should know the shit she's saying is gonna raise some flags.
I think she's just really trying to come across as like she's being super helpful to the investigation. Yeah. She'll do whatever they need, answer whatever. Because again, she's interrogated for 4.5 hours while Dan is in the hospital. And she hasn't seen her boys. And like her boys, their father is going to die. And like at no point is she like, I need to get out of here. I need to go get my kids, whatever. Like she's helping them arrange people to pick up the kids and stuff. Again, it could just be a personality type thing. But I feel like if it were me, I'd be like, hey, I know you have to rule me out. Can we do that after I see my fucking children whose father was just murdered?
But also, why is she so hysterical when all she can talk about is herself and how he was treated her so poorly the entire marriage?
I don't know. I feel like you would still be, because she did love him at one point. Like, I feel like you...
Yeah, but the entire time in the interview, she said nothing about, oh yeah, we loved each other so much, and then we just, like, grew apart, and he started treating me badly. Like...
I think you could still be sad even if you, like, hated them at that point.
Sad, sure. But she's, like, hysterical. Like, she can barely talk in the beginning.
I don't know. This just sounds like me on a bad day. Like, this sounds like me when I had, like, a long day at work. Honestly. Emily knows I'm not lying.
I know. That's why it's funny.
Like, to me, I'm like, she doesn't sound that hysterical. She sounds upset.
No, she sounds like she's, like, fucking...
oh my God, I don't know. That's like me once a week when I call Emily. I'm like, she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I stubbed my toe.
My belt loop got stuck on a door handle.
Literally.
And it sent me into the next universe.
That was me when our camera wasn't working.
Dude.
Just kidding. I didn't cry. I didn't cry that time. I was proud.
You were on the verge. I could feel the tension.
I'm constantly on the verge of a mental breakdown.
It's because you're hungry. That's why.
Yes. Now, she also, like, starts giving very specific time frames. And granted, she was, like, looking through her phone before she gave them her phone. Mm-hmm. So, like, she could have, she was pulling up call logs and stuff, I think. But she's like, oh, he called me at 9:04. And this is, like, after they've taken her phone. She's saying, he called me at 9:04 and I didn't answer and blah, blah, blah. And then and I'm like, that's just really specific. Yeah. Again, you can decide whether or not it's weird. It's all opinion.
She couldn't say what time she officially showed up to meeting her friends at brunch, but she could say she talked to her ex-husband at 9:04. Or is that because she read the logs?
I think it's because she read she had looked at the phone. She was like, yeah, I think we messaged and stuff. And she's like looking at it. Then she gives it to them. Then she refers back to it like later when she doesn't have the phone. And she says 9:04. But it's just weird again. Mm-hmm. Now, the detective also asked Wendy, she's like, okay, so if it wasn't infidelity that ended the marriage, like, why did you guys get divorced? And she says that Dan was emotionally abusive. But she also, like, adds, she's like, but I didn't really tell anybody that. But no one really knew that.
No, I'm fine. For the sake of the kids. You heard that that's a dream. It's like, well, maybe we'll just take a walk around school. And I mean, I found him hard to be around. But so did a lot of people. They all knew he meant well. He was a decent, good human being. He wouldn't hurt anybody. He would never do this to anybody. I don't know who would want to hurt him like this. I really don't.
All right. I need to ask you, was your divorce, you said before, had nothing to do with infidelity? No extramarital affairs or anything like that?
Neither one of us.
It was just simply the fact that you all just didn't get along anymore, or was it just the fact that he was belligerent to you?
He never hurt me physically, but he was emotionally abusive.
Okay.
And I didn't tell most people that, so all most people know is it just didn't work out, and it's just the kids are young, and this is just better this way. So other than my family, who saw the way he treated me, most people were, well, I think his family was very surprised. He told everyone around the community that I was mentally ill, because only a crazy person would leave him, and so there's a lot. But, who would, so that's it. The circumstances, plain and simple, where it just wasn't a really healthy marriage, and I thought it would be better for the boys if they didn't grow up thinking that's the way you treat women.
So again, it's like she constantly, it's like, okay, you're saying the right thing, you're saying too much now.
Yeah.
She's like, he was emotionally abusive, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't tell many people that. So most people wouldn't know that. It's like, she's explaining that she's getting ahead of the fact that when they go around and start interviewing their friends, people are going to be like, no, Dan was, he was an abrasive guy, but he was a good person. And he, and which again, this might be something that is true that, he may have been emotionally abusive. We're only seeing it from the outside. So alone, I feel like this isn't that sus, but it's when you put it together with all of the other little like extra things that she's saying.
Yeah, like, oh, he called me mentally ill.
Yeah, and then like the hitman joke that her brother made. It's like, it's just
all the weird things are. I'm making a list.
Yes, it's like they're very small and you can explain them away.
Yeah.
And I will admit that.
But all of them together at one time? I don't know.
And this is just from her statement. We're going to go so deep into this case. And trust me, when you hear the rest of it, you're going to be like, yeah, this is adding up. This is what she's saying is weird once you have more context. Then Wendy starts to ask them what she can tell people. And she's like asking, she goes, well, I have all these weekend plans that I'm going to need to cancel. So what can I tell people? Like, can I say what happened or what do you want me to say? And they're like, what do you mean? And you can see she kind of backtracks because she's realized it was kind of a weird question to ask.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm going to give you my opinion on it and then I'm going to play the clip for you guys so you can form your own opinion. But to me, it seems like she's trying to feel it out. Mm-hmm. Is she a suspect? Are they going to arrest her or are they treating her like a victim? She's trying to see, how long am I going to be here?
Yeah.
Do I need to cancel these weekend plans? Also in this clip, you're going to hear a second woman's voice. This is the victim advocate that they brought in.
Do you think I had like a whole weekend of plans ahead with the kids and stuff? Like, should I start contacting people and let them know that like I can't? What's a good idea? I just like I can't show up for like play dates right now. So
Sure, yeah.
I don't know. Like, do you want me not to tell people what's going on? Is this like?
Well,
I got that call from Lisa Perry. So like, how did she find out?
well, she said she saw something in Everett or heard
She
something.
said she heard there was a shooting on Trescott. I thought because she's a real estate agent, maybe she was rolling around and she saw Trescott. But how did is it on the news? Like,
Well, I can tell you that there was news media out there with cameras, but I don't know if anything has been reported as to the specific address.
Okay.
I don't know what our public information office has released.
I'm asking for you. Like,
Okay.
I don't want to like make this.
She wants to know what she can tell people or what she can't right now.
Which, in terms of making things better or worse for you.
I would say that for right now, I would not deny to anybody that something did happen. But
if I'm going to call and cancel all night, like I'm supposed to be at a party tonight, like.
Okay, I can't go. There's been.
So I can just tell people I'm just not going to be able to be there. I'll talk to you later, and that's it. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want.
Why did she need their help to figure that out?
Yeah, she's a lawyer.
I can't. I feel like she was fishing for information. Like, what can I tell people about what happened? Like, I feel like she was just she wanted them to be like, well, they saw a car fleeing from the scene and whatever, or like she wanted something more than that answer. And
hats off to the fucking interviewer,
the detective.
Yeah, because I mean,
I would love to interview this guy and be like, what were you thinking? And like, I don't know. Again, I just feel like she just seems. What a weird question to ask.
Because
I have all these
like,
plans. I'm supposed to go to a party tonight. What can I tell people?
Yeah.
Well, why wouldn't you be able to tell people that he was murdered? Mm-hmm. I think she was wondering if they were going to be like, oh, you're not telling them anything because you're not leaving here. Mm-hmm. Or like, I don't know. It's just weird. Like, why would you ask that?
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Wendy's basically, I think, just trying to find out when she can get out of there because she wants to know if she's a suspect or what is going on. And on that note, I actually think Emily and I are going to get out of here for the day. We have somewhere that we need to be on time, and we thought we were going to finish everything I had written for part 1 today, but we did not, which means you're going to get a bonus episode this Thursday where we finish part 1. It will probably be about an hour long, I think, because we've got to finish up what I had written, but we're going to leave it there for today. And we will see you guys on Thursday. Huzzah! Now, if you guys love the pod, make sure you're following us wherever you're listening so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
And while you're at it, we'd be forever in your debt if you had left us a 5-star rating.
For more content from us, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Both are at A Trial by Podcast.
You can also follow us on our Facebook and join our Facebook group.
You can shop our merch by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting our website, atrialbypodcast.com.
A Trial by Podcast is a fully independent podcast. If you'd like to help support us, you can do so by donating through the link in our show notes.
The site we use for this is called Buy Me a Coffee, but don't worry, your donations will never be used for coffee or frivolous things, only for expenses related to running and growing the podcast. So thank you guys for your support.
Thank y'all. Huzzah.
Huzzah.